I just built this AI system that recreated the method of this channel, which got 457 million collective views through his 200 plus videos, all by reframing movies into vertical clips to show more of the scenes that people know well and love. And this account, for example, already has close to 600,000 followers, and you can see some of the videos that they posted only last week are still getting views by the hundreds of thousands. So you can just imagine if you have a system like this helping you automate the production of these clips, just how much the growth opportunity can be. Because every time this system runs, which you can schedule every day or even every hour, it produces videos like this.
We are under attack!
And you can also use this same workflow to turn your video tree generations, which are mostly horizontal, into vertical clips.
Cold plunges are great for increasing blood flow and improving your mood.
Or if you're a YouTube content creator or someone who's working with a content creator client, you can easily turn their videos into vertical clips so that they can expand their reach into the short form social channels like TikTok or Instagram Reels.
The city is doomed, Commander Fistfight. I've poisoned the water supply.
Actually, because you poisoned the water supply, we discovered that the city's pipe infrastructure is really severely outdated. So thank you for bringing our attention to that.
And the great thing is, since the tool that we are using is low code, I think anyone can do it, even if you're a complete beginner in the space, especially with AI tools like ChatGPT being able to assist you now. And learning about AI automation is also one of the best investments of your time if you just hop over at Google Trends and see the demand for it, which is steadily rising over the past few weeks. So if you have the time today, invest the next few minutes to learn about AI and watch till the end and pick up an important skill that will take you to the edge of what's possible now with artificial intelligence. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Jay. We run Robo Labs, which is our agency helping mostly content businesses use AI in meaningful ways. And we also run the RoboNuggets community, which is our AI education arm. We have more than 1,600 members now, who are all AI practitioners located across the globe. And here at RoboNuggets, our mission is simple, is to make AI easy to learn for anyone who wants to, no matter what your background is. In fact, to make this as easy as possible, I'll be uploading this template into our community, which in this no-code automation tool we'll be using. You can just import it directly via this button, and that will create this AI system for you without you even having to lift a finger. Okay, let's dip into this. So what we'll be setting up today is quite simple. It would be this workflow where there are 3 sections. The first one here at the left is going to be the input region, where you'll be feeding this system with the horizontal video that you want to reframe. Here in the purple area is where the magic happens. We'll be calling on an AI model to reframe that video for us, and then out comes the vertical clip, which you will be logging into Google Sheets, just so that you have proper tracking of the clips that you have reframed. And this tool that we are using is called n8n, which if you don't have an account for that yet, you can just find that in the link in the video description below. And if you haven't heard of n8n yet, basically it's an automation tool similar to Zapier or Make.com, but it's gotten quite popular because of how flexible it is with using a lot of the AI systems that have gotten quite popular recently. And it's also not that complicated to learn if you have someone to guide you in using it. But once you've signed up to n8n, all you need to do to start is to click Create Workflow here at the top right, and then just rename this with whatever that you want. And for the very first step here, what you want to do is to add a trigger, which is just going to be the way by which this automation is triggered. So there's a lot of options here, but the one that I commonly use to start with is this schedule trigger. You can just leave this be. Basically, it just says that your automation will run once every day at midnight. And if you click away, that is going to be your trigger node. And if we go back to our end in mind automation, you'll see that to complete the input region, all we need to do is to add this Google Sheet node, which is where our automation will get our horizontal clip. So to do that, just click on this plus icon and find Google Sheets there. And you want to get the action called Get Rows in Sheet. And then just name this with something like Get Video Link, so that you know what it does. And also because in n8n, it's actually going to reference the name of your node later on. So it's a good practice if you're following this step by step to just type this in exactly. And if you're new to n8n, it's probably a good idea to just step back and understand the common design of working across nodes. Because with every node that you are configuring, there's always just going to be 3 regions that you need to understand. The area here at the left is going to be the input region, and this contains all of the data and information that are coming from previous nodes that are now getting passed along to this node that you are configuring. And in this green region are all the parameters and setup that define how this node is going to handle all that data. And then using that configuration, it will provide you with some sort of output here in the red sector, which will now be passed along as input for the succeeding nodes. So you can see here in Google Sheets that design of working applies as well, and you can resize this if you want. But to set this up, essentially you just need to first connect your n8n to Google Sheets, and if you haven't done that yet, you can just click create new credential here. And what is useful with n8n is that it has single sign-on, so you can just click that, and that will connect your n8n to your Google account, which you only need to do once. And then resource and operation are already set up, so now you just need to choose the document that you want to work with, which for me it would be this Google Sheet, which if you go to that document, you'll see it's quite a simple template with only a couple of columns. And I'll share this in the community as well, so that what you can do is to just click File and click Make a Copy, and that will create a copy of this template in your Google Drive. But just to go through this column, because it's quite simple to set up yourself, you essentially just have these columns here for your input region. You have an ID column, which just goes from 1 up to however many clips that you want to reframe. You have a column here called Horizontal Links, Gdrive. And in this automation, there are several options, but I think most people have access to Google Drive, so that's what we'll be using. Essentially, what you just need to put here, if you use one example here, you'll see that it's a horizontal video, which is the one that we just want to reframe into vertical, which I uploaded into my Google Drive. And to get that link is just a common way of working where you click on share and then copy this link. Just make sure that the access for the link is set to anyone so that n8n can access it as well. So if we copy that, we just put this here, and then we have this column called production status, which is just our way to declare to the automation what clips we want it to reframe. So here you can just type in for production, and that would just allow your AI automation system to capture this as the next job that it needs to produce. You can leave these columns be for now. These will be filled up automatically by our automation, which you'll see in a bit. But once you have this set up, if we now go back to our n8n automation that we're setting up, you can just select that template that you have, find the sheet that you are working with, which is sheet 1 in our case. And then for the filter, you want to add in a filter here where you're basically going to say that you're going to find the next row where the column called production status says for production, which if we go back to our Google Sheet is just this column, and it will look for the next row, which says it's for production. And then the last thing you want to add here is to add an option for return only first matching row and toggle that on so that you're only going to work with only one video at a time. So now if you click execute step here, what will happen is this node will execute what it intends to do. And here you'll see that it obtained the next row where the production status says for production. And what we really need here is this Google Drive link, because that is what we'll be passing along to the next section. So that is your input region now done. Now, if you want to add those sticky notes, which I had earlier, you can just do a right click and add those in. And then you can just reposition this and set them up as so. And there you now have your input region done. Now going back to our final workflow, you'll see that we now have these nodes that will allow us to reframe the video. So to set those up, the very first node that you want, if you just drag this and find the next node, it will be the HTTP request node. And this HTTP request node is one of the most popular nodes in n8n because it's the primary way by which we can use third-party tools right within n8n, which makes this tool very flexible. So to know what it does, just go ahead and rename it to something like reframe videos. And then you want to change the method from get to post, because what we'll be doing in this case is we'll be posting a request to a third-party tool, similar to how you would be posting a mail, for example. And if you're posting a mail, you obviously would need an address to send that mail to, and so this URL is where you will be sending that to. And the third-party tool we'll be using in this case is called file.ai, which again you can just find in the link below. And if you scroll down here, what file.ai basically does is it's an AI model aggregator. So think of it as like an app store, which makes it much easier for you to access software. This time, what's happening in the industry is that there are these AI model aggregators, which File.ai is one of, that lets you connect to several models like these ones much more easily, so that instead of having to learn how to connect to VO3, to Cling2.1, etc., one by one, you can just learn how to use File.ai, and you can pretty much use these models much more quickly. In fact, if you head to the Explore tab, you'll see that they have something like 250 plus models in here, which is the reason why File.ai is one of the most common third-party tools that we use. But under File.ai, if you just search for reframe, there are a couple of options here, but the one that we'll be using is this Ray 2 Flash reframe, which is coming from Luma Labs. So if you click on that, you'll see that there's a playground here where you can try out the model, but really what you would need is to go to this API tab. If you just make that bigger. And then this is a pretty long documentation on how you can use this tool, but just to teach you how to use this, because it's common with a lot of these models, you just head to HTTP because that's the request that we'll be making. Then if you scroll down and find this submit a request part of the documentation, that usually has everything you need. So back to our workflow, the question is, where are you going to send that post request to? Specifically a URL which you can put here. The answer to that is available here in this submit a request, which is just this URL. So just copy that in and paste that there. And you can see that that basically will point us to this model that is being run and hosted by File.ai. So that's very good. So now that you know where to send it to, you obviously would also need to write something in that request so that the address knows what to do. So to do that, you just click this send body as on, which will be the body of our message. Have the body content type be JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and then change the specify body using JSON, which you will see in a bit. And for us to fill in details here, again, it's all just here in this file.ai documentation for this model. What I like to do is to go back to the playground because that allows us to see the parameters that we can manage here. You can see that all we really need is a video URL, which is the horizontal video that will be passing along to this model. And then you have a couple of options on the aspect ratio here, which is great. 9:16 is what we need for this case, but feel free to play around with any of those. But 9:16 will provide you with the vertical video. And if you click on more here, there's a couple of additional settings, which we won't go through today, but that's available for you to play around with. But coming from this, you just want to change the form to JSON. And here you'll see the JSON version of that input, which is what you need. And when you talk about JSON, and in case you're pretty new to all of these, when you see these brackets and braces, where there's a parameter and a value here, that's basically what this notation entails. So it's just the format that computers have accepted. And it's pretty much what a lot of web technology are using to communicate to each other. So just copy that in. And here you just want to change that to expression and place that there. So now if you look at this, it's true that we need the aspect ratio to be 9:16 every time, but you actually need this video URL to be different because this video URL is just a sample video from file.ai. And so you obviously would need to delete that and replace it with this Google Drive horizontal links that you have from the previous step. So if you just drag it there, you'll see that this green text appeared, which basically means that it's a dynamic value because in reality, what's resulting is this actual link that you have. But since we're working with Google Drive in this case, there's actually a special notation for Google Drive that you need to add in. So you can just copy this in the description below, but if you just replace it with that, what this will now give you is that special notation in Google Drive where you're instructing Google Drive to export and download this video, specifically this video that you uploaded, which is the ID portion coming from Google Drive's file, which is available here. So that's the same thing pretty much. Now you just want to make sure that this is enclosed by these double quotations because when working with JSON, that is how it should be because it's a standard notation that a lot of the internet accepts. So now that we have our request set up and also where to request it, if you click execute step, this will still fail for you because it will tell you that you don't have the proper credentials yet. And so for you to set up that authorization, you just need to set up this authentication. There's many ways to do this, but the most common one that I recommend is to find the generic credential type and look for the header auth generic auth type. And under here, if you don't have a file AI credential yet, just click on create new credential, rename it with whatever that you want. And then here you'll see that it's asking for a name and a value. So if you go back to file.ai, find the API under the API section again, and back to our submit a request, you'll see that under this header, that is providing you with the instructions of how to set up the name as well as the value for this credential. So just copy in this name, which is authorization, and this value, which is key, followed by your file key into here. In fact, so that you can see this, just change this to expression. And here, this is correct because that's fixed. But if you see a $ there, what that's basically instructing you is to add in your actual API key. So if you go back to file.ai and go to your account, if you go under API keys, that is basically where you can add a key, which you can go ahead and copy here. Now, an API key is like a password. So if you just share it around, then people can use your account and your credits. So just be careful there. So for example, here, I have it redacted, but in reality, this will be a much longer key. But once you have that set up, you can just make sure that that is selected. And when you execute this step again, you'll now have a successful output that says that your request is now in queue. So what's happening behind the scenes is that n8n has submitted your request to reframe this video to file.ai, and it's now going to use the Luma Labs model to do just that. So behind the scenes, Luma Labs is hard at work with reframing this video of yours. Now, if in case this failed for you, It might be possible that you ran out of free credits with File AI, but what's great about platforms like File is that you actually don't need to be subscribed to them. You can add credits depending on what you need, and you can do that under this billing section. But going back to our workflow, once this is done, you can just click away. And what we'll be doing next is to literally wait for Luma Labs to finish our video generation. So just find the wait node as the next node. And here we will be setting it as something like 5 minutes once we finish this workflow. But for the sake of this tutorial and so that we can move on to the next step, just set this as 1 second and click execute step. So that way you can move on to the next step quite easily. So that is all set. You can just click away. And then finally, after some time has passed, what we'll be doing next is to get the video that we just generated. So the simplest way to do this is to just copy this HTTP request by clicking on Control D while you have that selected and then relinking it here. Now, if we open this, you can just change the name of this into Get Reframed because that is exactly what we'll be doing. And now we'll be changing the method from post to get because we won't be posting a request in this case. And with a get request, you don't need a body for this instance. And so you can just toggle that off. The credential is still the same, but this URL will also have to change because this is the URL for posting a request. So how do you do that? Well, if you go back to our File AI page for this model we're using, you can find there's a section here for get the result. So that will take you to that portion of the documentation. And that will also provide you with the URL that you need to get your request from. So just copy that in and paste that there. And again, you have a $sign here. So that means it should be a dynamic value and it's asking you to provide the request ID. And where is that request ID? It is here, right in your input area. So just go and remove that and drag this one again. And so there's a preview here. What's happening in reality is we are completing this URL with the request ID. Now just make sure there's no extra space there. And now let's click on execute step. And here it'll tell you if it's still in progress. And usually in my experience, this takes around 5 minutes to finish. So we'll just wait a bit before we re-execute this. This step doesn't really take any credits, so you can just check every time without burning through your credits. But another way to check is if you go back to that same model page, scroll up under requests. Here you'll see all the requests that you have asked for. And this is the request that we just made just 5 minutes ago. And you'll see that if it has a status of 200 in green, that means that it's finished. And so if you go back to our workflow, click execute step, now we have an output here and this URL, which you can actually copy and paste to any browser tab. And there you go, coming from a horizontal video, it just created for you this vertically reframed video, which is looking pretty good. So now to complete this automation, if you just click away, all you really need to set up here is to log that video into your Google Sheet again. So to do that, just extend this, find the Google Sheet node once again, and now you'll be looking for the update row in sheet action. This credential should already be set up for you because you just did it earlier, but this time the operation is to update a row. And so that n8n knows what we're going to update, first you need to find the sheet that you are working with, which in my case would be this one. Find the tab or the sheet again where your info is stored. And then you'll see that it just fetch all of our columns there. Now, so that n8n knows which row specifically to update, it's going to ask you which column it will match on. And in this case, we're just matching on the ID, which if you go back to the Google Sheets, you can remember is just this ID column, the very first one. And then we want it to provide the number 4. So how do you provide that dynamically? So back in n8n, all you need to do is to find under get vid link this ID column and then drag it here. And that will again provide you with a dynamic value for the row that you were working with in this specific run, which is 4 in this case. Now, obviously, our intention here is to store our video we just generated into this column called vertical links. So you just drag that in. And then under this date produced, you can just type in this expression, which is a JavaScript expression, but it also works in n8n for double brackets and $now. And that is just a nice way for you to return today's date. And so now if we execute this step, and look at our Google Sheet, and you'll see that it just stored that video URL for you as well as today's date. Now, I think a step I missed is it should update this production status to done. So to do that, just type in done under production status and click execute step. And there you go. It just updated it to done. And so if you have other jobs here, it will now proceed to the next one. And you can just rename this accordingly so that you know what it does. And that's it. If you click away and just rearrange this, you now have that final workflow that is going to reframe your horizontal videos and output them into vertical. So now to set this up, you can just set this to active and also make sure that the wait node here is set to a longer time duration. So 300 seconds is what I recommend because it would roughly take 5 minutes to finish that job, and click on save. So now to take this further, and if you want to take that video you just generated and auto-publish it to the social media channels of your choice, you can just watch this tutorial. Essentially, that will start with your Google Sheet with the video URL and then post it to whatever social channel that you want. And also, just a note with this simpler setup, there's actually two key limitations to it if you're doing it this way. One is the clips that you can feed to it is limited to under 30 seconds, which is a limitation set by Luma Labs themselves, which are the owners of the AI model. And secondly, you can note that it doesn't have these black bars animation that I showed earlier. So what I've done is create a level 2 tutorial for this video, which you can just find here. And that will teach you an evolved version of this workflow that allows you to feed this system with videos that are longer than 30 seconds and also have that option for the black bar in the video itself. So you can just find it in our community if that's something of interest. And this one I originally uploaded to my channel as well. But because it used a tool called Apify to auto-extract the videos, this platform actually didn't like it so much. And so they unfortunately removed it. But that's available for you in the community if in case you want to check it out and want to learn further. And if you need a summary of the costs, I just made this quick slide to show that. Essentially, your only variable cost here is using the Ray 2 Flash model, which is 6 cents per second. And you obviously have that fixed cost of using the n8n tool. If in case you want to use it beyond the free trial, there's obviously a cost to that, but it's non-incremental if you're already using it for other automations. And as I mentioned, this whole template, we'll be uploading it in our community, which you can just find in the link in the video description. There's dozens more AI lessons and tutorials here, each with their own template and blueprint, which you can just import. And in the community, a lot of our members, as well as myself, share several paid opportunities and partnership collaborations here, in case that's something that you're keen on to get started with earning from AI. And we also have a lot of events and learning sessions, which we regularly hold in a community. So that's something we offer if in case you're looking for that piece. And occasionally we do IRL hangouts too across the world. So check that out if that's for you and if you want to have a community of AI practitioners to succeed with. And that's it for this one. See you guys next time. Thank you.